Good morning. It's about 4 a.m. here in the home office, and I'm determined to get a video out every week. This one does not have the strumming guitar music or the fancy titles, just because I'm still in experimental innovation mode about this particular interactive notebook challenge. Now, remember, you do not here this week have to use this challenge. You may come up with your own concept and your own theme for your page. But if you'd like to try out some of my concepts, that's why I do them. I tell myself when I teach a class like this, if I'm going to have you guys make 7 interactive notebook pages in the same amount of time, I'm going to make 7 interactive notebook pages. I try to model as much as possible, and so this is my attempt to model. This particular one we're still working on. It'll eventually become a fancy video, but it's based on non-linguistic representations, which, if you know your Marzano stuff from, what was that, 2008 that came out, Marzano talked a lot about the importance of using non-linguistic representations. I believe in them because they set up what I call a student-centered classroom. When you have students having to explain their non-linguistic representations to one another, you have a student-centered classroom going on where the students are doing more of the talking than the teacher. And to me, that's the valuable classroom experience I want to see when I'm working with GT kids. And so without anything fancy, I'm just going to show you the page I created this week. Next week, you'll get another one. You don't have to follow that, but I want you to have suggestions just in case you're looking for suggestions. So minimize myself. So the very first thing you do when you create an interactive notebook page based on a non-linguistic challenge is have your students create a single or a series of non-linguistic representations on a topic of study in preparation of that 2-page spread. You have your students write their explanations to their non-linguistic representations on the other side of the 2-page spread. And then because it's interactive, non-linguistic representations are totally easy to make interactive just because, hey, guess what this means? That's inviting interactivity in. And so somehow the students have to design the page so that there's a little guessing game and some information exchange going on as they try to interpret one another's non-linguistic representations. If that seems confusing, let me show you my example. First of all, I, of course, started with a rough draft. I took on the topic, the 4 main reasons why World War I started. Took on a history topic this time. And so this is my rough draft. Those squares represent flags. I thought I would use flags to represent the countries. This is what it looks like now in final draft. I kind of like the way that I personified flags, turned them into people, or put faces on them to give them expressions. But these are non-linguistically represented for you, the 4 main causes of World War I. If you'd like to pause and try to guess, that's interactivity right there. You don't have to, though, because here's what the full page looked like when I was finished. On one side, I had my non-linguistic representations, and the other side, I cut out 4 flaps, and they cover up. Underneath each flap is written an explanation of one of those non-linguistic representations. And just so you know, there are interactive instructions. I'm going to read them to you, why not? So at left, represented non-linguistically by me, are 4 main causes of World War I. Beneath the flaps, you'll find my explanations of my non-linguistic reps. I will happily explain any visual that you can't make sense of. And so right in my instructions, I invite the interactivity. To me, that's important in a gifted and talented classroom, that students have the ability to talk to each other and interact with one another's thinking, hearing each other's metacognition. And then the next step, first, please take a look at the non-linguistic representation page and take a stab at what each one might mean, knowing that you know my topic is the 4 main reasons of World War I. Please do this for all of them, and I'll just go back there. So they would next just take guesses on what those 4 sectioned pieces, non-linguistic representations, mean. And so, coming back here, and then next they have to choose their favorite color from my 4 colored flaps, and they have to lift it, read what's under it, and then try to discover which of the 4 pictures that flap is describing, and then they have to repeat the process over there where it says third, fourth, and fifth. Ultimately, they have to lift up all the flaps and then look over there. So not only is it interactive and they have to guess the picture, but then they have to read the explanation and look back at all the four options of non-linguistic representations and say, I think it's got to be this one because you've just explained it. So it becomes a very interactive activity where ideas are being exchanged and students are talking about them. For reasons of a GT classroom, those are good things to have happen. And let me just show you what happens if you lift one of the flaps. So let's say I've decided the orange one is my favorite color, and I start with it. One of these non-linguistic representations stands for militarism. Germany saw that England had a stronger navy than they did, and France had a stronger army. The nations began competing for who had the strongest army and navy, is what I wrote to describe one of my non-linguistic representations. Have my facts in there, put them kind of in my own words, and then I also linked it to this non-linguistic representation where you see Germany down here at the bottom, looking at Britain with its bigger navy and looking at France with its bigger army. By the way, it's very hard to draw cannons without making them look biological. So next time I'm using clip art. But this is my non-linguistic representation of the idea that's under the flap. I'll show you another one just to show you how the whole page kind of turned out. This one is the yellow flap. One of these reps stands for imperialism. When the Germans and the Italians saw how many colonies France and Britain had, they wanted that too. They had colony envy, and so suddenly, because they were conflicting already, these alliances, they were conflicting in larger places that were farther away. And so here's my non-linguistic representation for this one. Even though the 13 colonies aren't relevant, I thought that was the best image to let them think of the word colonization. And the colonies they set up were actually in Africa and Asia, but I wanted to represent colonies, so I thought of the American colonies. That little stick man is made up of who is that? That's Germany and Italy's flag, and so they're the ones who were interested in expanding, which is what he's saying in his dialogue bubble. And please notice I colored green around the dialogue bubble, not as an archetype this time for fertility, but as a green with envy kind of sign. And so all of that is an explanation that my students would be giving to each other as they played this guessing game with each other. And so that's the process of creating a non-linguistic representation. A new page that I'm working on, a new idea. If you like that idea and want to use it this week or on any of your free topics for the final project, remember you do get 3 independent choice topics, and you get the option to design the concept or the page however you will. Non-linguistic representation is just good teaching. That's what Marzano's book said. It was one of the 9 best strategies for increasing depth of thinking, and they do work, and an interactive notebook might be a nice place to try one out so that you had a model to show your kids. All right, I'm done babbling. It's for, what does that say, 4:10 in the morning now. Have a great day, everyone. I need some coffee. I will look forward to seeing your independent pages by the end of this week. If they happen to be interactive non-linguistic representation pages, no reason that would ever be held against you. But if they happen to be your own independent ideas, that's awesome too. Boy, I can sure babble at 4 in the morning, can't I? Have a great week, everyone. Bye.